The post-Cameron Brink era for the 2024 Los Angeles Sparks began tonight, here with Jackie Powell for us to talk about what it looked like, what it meant on and off the court, and what is ahead for this Sparks franchise that, to my mind, has a lot to be excited about at the same time. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
A very pleasant good evening to you. I am Howard Megdal.
And I'm Jackie Powell.
And this is the latest episode of Locked On Women's Basketball, coming to you from just in front of the great Barbra Streisand here in the Barclays Center Media Room. First of all, I want to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Over 200,000 of you showed up in May alone, the way we show up for you 6 days a week. If you haven't done it yet, go ahead and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, it is not just me. It is not even just me and Jackie. It is the entire team over at thenexthoops.com, where we have over 100 reported pieces every single month on women's basketball. Make sure you subscribe. $9 a month, $72 a year. It all goes to incredibly talented, hardworking reporters, editors, photographers doing this work. We are there every day. We are covering all the players over at The Next. And so a player who we had the privilege of covering throughout her time at Stanford and through her early, precocious rookie years, Cameron Brink, second overall pick in the 2024 draft, lost to injury, and we had a feeling it might go that way when we had Curt Miller on the podcast yesterday. Curt, awaiting those results, hoping for better as we were, but that ACL tear, it led to, and we're going to talk about this in segment 2, an outpouring of support for Cameron Brink. But Jackie, in segment 1, we're going to get into the basketball part of it. And I just off the top, what were the biggest things you saw that Cameron Brink impressed you by doing as a player in this league?
I mean, I know you want to start with the rim protection, but I would just sort of say the versatility in general. I mean, Curt Miller pregame, he spoke about many of her offensive gifts being underrated. And I happen to agree. I think she is, tonight we saw the Liberty go up against the Sparks and Jonquel Jones had 8 or 9 assists. So I see that potential in Cameron Brink. She is an excellent passer. And she can hit threes. There is Jonquel Jones, Brianna Stewart type potential for Cameron Brink. But I'm not even talking about her defense, which is, defensive player of the year level potentially right now, which is what's sort of scary. And I know, Howard, there are numbers that back that up besides the eye test.
Assistant GM of the LA Sparks, Eli Horowitz, was tweeting out about it before this even happened, right? Just talking about the fact that they were number 1 in field goal percentage defense with Cameron Brink on the floor. You could even just see it, if I'll use my friend Doug Feinberg of the Associated Press's eye test. The gravity changes when Cameron Brink is on the floor. There was a quickness to the way in which she was able to close out, even on the perimeter shooters. That to me, there's every reason to believe that Cameron Brink can come back healthy and be remarkably successful. We've seen so many players do it. Brittany Sykes had 2 torn ACLs and has come back to have an incredible career with athleticism as a key part of it. But the thing, and it's a sadness to me that goes along with it, is the player always changes. Brianna Stewart, after the Achilles injury, was indisputably great and has won championships and MVP since then, but a different player. And so from that perspective, when somebody is so quickly grasping the defensive ability to play at an elite level in the WNBA, something rookies always struggle with, almost always, it was remarkable to me. From that offensive perspective, Cam's shot is so pure, right? I mean, we didn't talk about the fouls and all the things that go into keeping her on the floor, but you see a JJ, a Brianna Stewart ceiling for her. That's sort of where you think she can end up as a two-way player.
I mean, I think so. You look at, I mean, when she was in college, her free throw shooting. I mean, what were her free throw shooting numbers?
Enormously impressive. Yeah, I'll load those up as we're talking,
but she had in college, I believe it was this ridiculous streak where she, I mean, she was not missing a free throw. And I know there's that, I guess, theory where if you can really shoot free throws, you can also really shoot the ball.
It's significant. And again, it's worth noting, you want to talk about her ability to grow, develop, work as a player, went from a 64% free throw shooter as a freshman all the way up to north of 84% as a junior and 83.6 as a senior. Somebody who, clearly has that ability, was unbelievably efficient around the rim in college. And yeah, to me, for what it's worth, I asked that question, but I have long believed this. I thought, quite frankly, there were two generational players coming out of this draft, and Caitlin Clark is clearly one of them, and Cameron Brink is clearly the other one. And there's a ton of talent in this draft, and we've seen it throughout. We've seen what Angel Reese has done, what Rakia Jackson has done, including tonight. But there are two generational talents, to my mind, that we saw there. And losing one of them off the court for the remainder of this season, our Lucas Seehofer talks about roughly a 12-month recovery time, could be sped up as quickly as 9. Sometimes it's as long as 18. It all depends on the human bodies are so different from one another. And, we hope a speedy recovery comes for her, both for who she is as a person, but significantly. And it is just part of it for us as well. Not as important, but significant for those of us who care about ball the way we do, and the way I'm sure you do as well. The type of player that she is, seeing her back out there matters. Now, for the Sparks tonight, we saw immediately the type of impact not having her will have. So I had a chance to speak to Curt Miller about it after the game, and he was overwhelmingly honest about it. Lee Rue is a 6'7", 25-year-old center who's enormously talented. She is more stationary. She is not a Cameron Brink in style or substance. It's just a different player. And so I asked Curt whether he thought he needed to come up with some different schemes to essentially redraw his defense as he moves forward. And he pointed out, not inaccurately, yeah, but when are you going to do it? When do you have a chance to practice? They're in the midst of playing 9 games in 18 days. They are going to play again in 36 hours and play on Saturday afternoon on national TV. He's going to have a practice tomorrow. He said they're not going to move around a lot in that practice. Again, it's about survival. It's about making sure that his players are able to handle this stuff. What else can you do beyond that other than, essentially hope for the best that some other players are able to essentially pick up what are now these massive extra gaps in defense?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the box score and I happened to see that the Sparks scored 44 points off the bench. Was that, I mean, they got a lot of bench production tonight from their wings. And so I am not the X's and O's savant, but when you can have, I guess, versatile, shifty, long wings like Ray Burrell out on the floor for more, maybe that's sort of how they try to solve this issue. They just try to put more length on the floor. Sure, Zaya Cook is not a, how do I put it? She's not the greatest shooter, but she can slash and she does have length. And so, something the Liberty have done actually is they've surrounded Jonquel Jones and Brianna Stewart with these longer wings. Yeah. So maybe that's something that LA can do to try to replace some of the length that Cameron Brink brought.
It was a really nice thing to say. Zaya has, by her own account, struggled with her shot here in the pros. And so I got a chance to ask her about that post game, about, how satisfying was. I think she won 4 for 7 tonight. Those games have been in short supply for her. And she was immensely satisfied with seeing progress, seeing the ball go through the hoop. She and Curt both talked about how hard she is working. It's not a question of effort. in any way. But she also said just flat out, it was also about winning. And it's just going to be hard. Rickea Jackson is going to have to play backup 4 now for this team, as Curt talked about. And that just breaks my heart. Rickea Jackson, who was doing so well as a starting 3, it's just a question of what the team needs right now. Again, and we'll get more to it, and especially segment 3. The LA Sparks are built with a plan in mind. It is a multi-year plan. The Sparks this front office needs to be allowed to see that plan through. So we're going to talk more about that in segment 2 and in segment 3, but lots more to come here. Howard Megdal here with Jackie Powell. This is Locked On Women's Basketball. Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by Game Time. And Game Time gives you the opportunity to make sure you are getting not just WNBA tickets, but the WNBA tickets that you want. We got an email just tonight that the Las Vegas Aces have sold out of all of their regular season games. We continue to see teams doing this right and left. And so when you need to take somebody like, for instance, my daughter Juliet to a basketball game when she is a WNBA junkie, you need to make sure she's able to not just see the game, but see the game in the way that she wants to do it. You can browse through the Game Time app and see the opportunities, not just to get the tickets, but see your in-seat view, a panoramic view from your seat from the app before you buy. Plus, there's a lowest price guarantee. If you don't get the lowest price from Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. How do you do this? It's easy. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back here with the great Jackie Powell talking about the Los Angeles Sparks in the post-Cameron Brink 2024 era. Of course, we wish her a speedy recovery. Every indication she'll be able to play sometime in 2025, depending on that recovery time, hopefully as soon as opening night. But again, no need to rush, a long career ahead of her. And a career that already at age 22 has made an impact off the floor. Jackie, take me through some of the reactions that you heard and saw from teammates, even opponents, talking about Cameron Brink, the person.
Yeah, this was something that I noticed on the internet and just in some of my discussions with her teammates. And as you said, opponents too. I spoke to Layshia Clarendon. I spoke to Sabrina Ionescu. I spoke to Breanna Stewart. These are 3 people who know Cameron Brink really well. And that's a wild thing to say because she's a rookie. They're all like, oh, yes, I've known Cam for years. Or, oh, I know her very well. I was like, but she's a rookie. And so I think you also saw, social media tweets and Instagram posts from so many different people in the women's basketball community. And what really struck me was that in the past few weeks and even couple months, the women's basketball community has been, I guess, a bit fragmented and a bit divided when it comes to how, I guess, media and television is talking about the WNBA. And there's been talk about jealousy, and there's just been a lot of discord in this community that we maybe aren't used to. And so when Cam tore her ACL, I saw this unity that sort of came out of the woodwork that we haven't seen in a really long time. And it was really striking how this one rookie, and not the rookie that has been creating a lot of the discord, or rookies plural, because there are 2.
And I would just say, I don't think you meant that. I don't think creating the discord. I think the subject of that discord, I think would be a fair way to say it. But go ahead.
No, you were correct. It is 10:26.
I know. Yes. I know.
No, I do not fault the individuals.
No, I know you don't.
I guess it is the people like us who maybe haven't been covering the sport for as long as we have. But it was really striking to see people from every corner of this sport coming to support Cameron Brink. And the question I kept asking people was, what is it about her that people were making it a point and being intentional to, support her publicly? And it was Laisha Clarendon who said to me, Jackie, she is authentically who she is. From day one, she has been just full of life, full of joy, not, hiding anything, showing us who she is. And there's something really respectable and I guess admirable about that. And that's something that's contagious.
I would have to point out, by the way, when Laisha Clarendon refers to someone as authentic, that person is authentic. There's no greater praise I can think of for how a person chooses to live. So that's really striking to me. And I had the chance to catch up with Laisha following the game as well. Laisha being a model for Adidas Pride is just something that to me speaks to where we are in 2024. There's been regression in a lot of areas of American life, but the kind of progress we see there is something to be celebrated. So, but I digress. To your point about Cameron Brink, it almost is doing the impossible, right? When it seems like everything has spurred an argument in, I would say, not just the world of women's basketball, but I think specifically within the social media part of women's basketball, in a way that I think social media is a fragmentation of this world in a way that doesn't reflect how life is lived in every significant way. That even on social media, Cameron Brink was unifying, was really significant in my mind about it as well. And so, it almost felt like a little bit of sadness hovering over the Sparks over these past couple of days. I'm wondering if you got that sense too, and just sort of how it manifested itself.
Yeah, I did. I mean, in talking to Sabrina Ionescu, she sort of said to me, she said, you know what, it's really sad that someone had to get injured for our community to come back together.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, you're right. But I think something that Cameron Brink's teammates really appreciate about her and just her peers around the league is her understanding of what it means to be a WNBA player. And that is something that not all rookies grasp right away. And that doesn't just mean the professionalism on the court. It means their understanding of intersectionality, their understanding of their own privilege in certain situations. I'm sure many of you have seen the interview she did with Dime, where she displayed allyship in a way that was so powerful. And, Laisha said to me pregame, he said, Cameron Brink knows how to be a white player in the WNBA. And that's an important conversation that we don't always have.
It, to me, and again, this goes back to even sort of those larger conversations, and it's probably worth a series of different podcasts to be even doing, right? Which is to say, what is reasonable to expect off the court of a WNBA player? And from my perspective, opinions can and should probably differ based on your perspective and your own sense of privilege as to what it is reasonable to expect. But from my perspective, what is clear, what is obvious is a player who is able to grasp that right away.
22.
And in multiple levels, the way that she did is remarkable, right? It's not common, and it is a significant part. You cannot tell the story of why she's unifying without talking about it in those terms. So, absolutely fascinating stuff. And, again, a sad but interesting night for the Sparks as well. So in segment 3, right after this, we're going to be talking a little bit more about where they go from here and why I believe the future is bright for the Sparks. I'm curious whether you feel the same way. So we'll be back in segment 3. This is Jackie Powell. I'm Howard Megdal. You are listening to Locked On Women's Basketball. Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by Prize Picks. And, Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. And what's great about it is that you're not locked in to just one league. So obviously there's the WNBA, and there are people like Rakia Jackson and Angel Reese looking to make names for themselves along greats like Breanna Stewart and Asia Wilson. You can win up to 100 times your cash, even just by watching them play ball. What's interesting, though, is that it's not just the WNBA. There was this past year, I was shocked. In this very building that we're in right now, a league, it was called the NBA, the National Basketball Association, where men were finally given the opportunity to play professional basketball. And Prize Picks embraced that. Prize Picks gives you the opportunity, not just WNBA, but NBA too, to turn $10 into $1,000 using NBA players. I don't think there were a lot of playoff games here in Brooklyn.
No,
is that right?
But the NBA did crown a champion this week, didn't
they? They did.
Yeah.
Okay. From I wasn't really familiar with Boston. I understand it's a suburb of Uncasville, Connecticut, but apparently the Celtics is the name of that team, and they want to change. I don't know if it's their first or their 18th. I have to take a look. So to play, obviously, the WNBA games that continue, and NBA and Major League Baseball as well, download the Prize Picks app and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONNBA on Prize Picks for a deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Yeah, Boston, Massachusetts, apparently. So back here in segment 3, Howard Megdal here with Jackie Powell. And so there's 2 parts to this, right? The one part is, oh man, Rakia Jackson's going to be a backup 4 now. Oh man, Leah Rue's going to have growing pains as a 25-year-old center, and there's not a lot of depth until, as Curt Miller talked about tonight, Azrae Stevens gets back. Having any sort of rim protection on this team. There's a lot of 3-point shooters. Team shot over 50% from the field. Curt pointed out only the second team to do that against the Liberty all season. But I sort of divide it into 2 different ways. This is a season that you experiment, you try, you find things. I frankly would not alter Rakia Jackson's path. I think you put her in a place where you ultimately want her to be successful long-term, to get an accurate sense of what she can be as a player, instead of asking her to do something you may not ultimately want her to do. But then the other part of it is there is a remarkable draft crop coming. And I just keep thinking back to a healthy Cameron Brink, Rakia Jackson, and let's just say Paige Beckers. We'll see. We'll see what the #1 pick turns out to be, who ends up getting it. The Washington Mystics will have something to say about that as well. And there's some other teams that will not make the playoffs. It is safe to say. But from that perspective, that's sort of the divide I have. So my question for you is twofold. 1, what do you most want to see out of the Sparks in 2024? And 2, do you share my view that this is a Sparks team that is on the right track? They just need some luck.
So can I take the second question first?
Yes, please.
So I agree with you. I think I have had so much respect for how the Sparks have executed their build. I know when we say rebuild, there is such a negative connotation attached to it. And I don't know. I just come from the perspective of just sort of say what it is.
Right.
Your franchise player, Nneka Ogwumike, she moved on. And so the Sparks, the way they reacted, I thought was incredibly brave, incredibly bold. And, there's this phrase, it's called doing it the right way.
Mm.
And I was always like, well, what does that really mean? And so I've learned that what it means is you're not cutting corners. You're not trying to jump over hoops. You're actually building something.
Yeah.
You're not trying to jump over different steps. You're taking it step by step. And so I think the Sparks have such a bright future ahead of them. And what's been really encouraging is actually just seeing how the team has been really intentional in parading around its young talent around the city.
Mhm.
There was a moment in time where Rickea Jackson and Cameron Brink were everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be. And so this is an LA Sparks franchise that is, still going through some growing pains, obviously trying to get the proper investment, not just in the basketball operations department, but,
Mhm.
On the business side and in other spots. And so, obviously, or hopefully, they are going to potentially land maybe another top 2, top 3 pick. And the way that you bring a franchise back to its glory days or back to winning is by having top tier talent.
That's how you do it. You can't rebuild with the mid part of the draft. You just
Nope.
can't do it in that same way. Yeah, my message to Los Angeles Sparks ownership is focus on the non-basketball stuff, on investing in the other side of it, in the marketing side of things. Let the basketball people who know what they're doing
They do know what they're doing.
take their course. Well, I'm with you, Jackie Powell. As always, it is delightful to chat basketball with you. Thank you to our listeners for making us your first listen every day. We will be back tomorrow
With me.
yes, indeed, with Jackie in the host chair. Jackie, who will you be talking to?
I will be talking to Katie Barnes, and it's so funny that you brought up that bit about Lasia Clarendon being a model for Adidas,
Yeah.
because our topic, we are talking all about WNBA and pride and that evolution that we've seen over time.
So excited to listen to this one as well. So thank you to our listeners. Thank you to Jackie. Thank you to Barbara for all the years, all the songs, and all the memories. Until then, I am Howard Megdal.
And I'm Jackie Powell.
Wishing all of you a wonderful Thursday night. I'm going to go drive home.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.